I'll call the WSESD board meeting to order at 6:01. So the first thing that we're going to do is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from April 12th, 2022?
So made.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes from April 12th, 2022, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And I don't see that Michelle is here. I was hoping that she would do the recognition of Allie West. She received the 2022 recipient of Vermont Nutrition Association School Nutrition Outstanding Achievement Award, and that was presented to her at the WSESU board meeting on April 13th. Does anyone in the administration have any connection to that you would like to speak to, or?
It's just that Allie is an advocate for kids and for families, and she's been wonderful to work with, and well-deserved honor and recognition.
Thank you, Mark. And Michelle, now that you're here, I didn't know if you wanted to speak to Allie West, or your
Yes, Allie's awesome. We all agree. I'm sorry, I don't even have the name of the award she won. I'm really gonna invite her. Oh, you have it. You're so good. Yeah, it was it Sheila Humphrey, I think, was in charge of the program who nominated them, those from, and I'm blanking all the names. I was gonna have the document and just read it. But basically, she was nominated for this 2022 recipient of Vermont Nutrition Association School Nutrition Outstanding Achievement Award. She won, and easily. The work she's been doing has been pretty remarkable. I think everyone in the district really appreciates it. I was excited just because I had my own personal story where just like right after COVID came and everything shut down, and like 2 days into the school year, or 2 days into remote learning, you know, the little school bus goes by our house and honks, and they're delivering meals, and that was Allie, and it was pretty remarkable work. Really, I know by more than just Allie, but she really oversaw something pretty remarkable. And yeah, they'll also be, I've invited them back. They've been working on developing, or they've already worked on it, developing professional development for trauma-informed cafeterias, which has been adopted and picked up throughout, like, and being used now nationwide. So I've asked them to come back to the SU meeting too to talk to us more about that. So very cool. But yeah,
Okay.
another someone to be proud of in our school district.
Thank you.
Sorry for late.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the, oh, I'm sorry, I should have read the meeting of the SESD board is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. And I believe Mark and I have both participated in 2 of 4 trainings, and I do believe that there have been a number of other board members who have been attending, and there was so the good thing about that is you can hear how some of the other districts are handling some things, and maybe can make things, we can try to make things better here. So I did want to say that anyone making a comment, this is something that I learned from there, so Anyone making a comment can expect a response that falls within one of the following categories. Receive an acknowledgement of the comment with no further action planned. Receive an immediate response from the board chair or administration. Administration would be directed to contact and respond to the person. Clarification sought from the administration for a specified meeting. The topic would be added to a specified future board agenda. The matter would be referred to an executive session, or a public hearing would be held on the matter. So if you don't receive a response, it may fall into one of those categories. So now we will go into the public comment of non-agenda items for 10 minutes. Do we have anyone in the public who would like to make a comment? Okay. And
Am I the only person?
we've been asked that when people come and make comments, especially if they're not right in the middle, if they would come over into a location where there is a microphone so people on Zoom would be able to hear. And also, please indicate your name and the town you're from, please.
I don't know if we should kneel. Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm from Guilford.
Don't do that.
That's not a Zoom. That's not the Zoom. The Zoom microphones are the little like circular ones around. They should be able to hear you fine from where you're standing, though.
Okay. So, just wrote some things down. So, hi, I just wanted to share that I recently attended a Guilford School Leadership Council meeting, which was very professionally run by Beth Bristol, who's the chair. And I was alarmed by the rude and disruptive behavior of the Putney School Board representative who sits on that council. Multiple times during the meeting, she was shouting out of control, it's alarming, to the point that Beth cannot conduct business. She did send a 5-paragraph apology out to participants after the meeting. However, this is the same board member who sent an offensive letter to a student and was posting offensive messages about the masking forum on Facebook. Therefore, this seems it's a chronic issue, which I'd like the board to take action on,
Okay.
and voters need to know.
Thank you very much. I would request that you follow that up with an email to me.
Okay. Voters need to know, and so I wanted it on public record.
Well,
Because
and
voters
the
do
appropriate,
need to
just
know.
like we wouldn't allow, if someone in the administration, if there was an issue with someone in the administration, something they did or whatnot, the proper protocol is to go to their supervisor. And so,
Okay, you're the supervisor, so I am going to, but they're also elected officials, and so voters do need to know the behavior of elected officials.
I appreciate that, and
And
I
so, thank
actually
you,
agree
I've
with
given
that.
my comment, and I will give
Thank
you a
you.
letter as well. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Anyone else? So it sounds like Jody.
Am I? There you go.
Yep, that's you.
Jody, you just muted yourself again.
Jody, can you unmute and make your comment?
I'm unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Should I start over again then?
Please.
At the last meeting, I requested that the Finance Committee meetings be Zoom be available to the public. Since then, I have talked to a couple of board members that thought that all committee meetings should have been and should be on the website from the Zoom. I don't find any of them. I did talk to the chair, Sean Murphy, of the Finance Committee, and he tried to find out through the administration where they were and get them on, and I think other people have also. So I'm just encouraging that these things, these Zoom meetings recorded, be part of the website so that other people can watch them too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. I do believe that there may be some that we can perhaps recreate. I'm not sure if it was clear where those were going to be on the website. So if people had, if board members had something, I'm not sure they knew where to send it or whatnot. I can say that I do know the SU will be redoing their website, so that's a good thing to, thank you, Jody.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to seeing them.
I would encourage you to check with the ADA regulations around that, because they may have to be closed captioned if you're going to post them, which is a very challenging issue. So a lot of places are not posting the Zoom recording, they're just posting the meeting minutes.
Okay.
Because it's so expensive to have Zoom closed captioned.
Okay.
But
All right.
I'm not sure that I would get an official opinion. is all
Thank
I'm
you, I
saying.
appreciate that. Sean?
Yeah, Sean Murphy, that's a really good point I wasn't aware of. I have been in touch with Gary, the IT individual at the central office, and a lot of other people have also, and Frank Rucker is aware of it. So it's not a seamlessly easy thing to do. And the reason is the bandwidth, an hour and a half. Finance meeting would be 338 megabytes, so you can't email that. And so it's in the process. It's way beyond my capability to understand or do anything with, but the people that know are working on it, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment or question or something?
I'll
they
just
would like?
share that we haven't had a protocol for this yet either. Like, we haven't had a system in place that would require us to put these up, although it makes total sense, not knowing the ADA part. And that is something that we talked about having our next website complying with. That's something that's been talked about a year back. So that's an important piece to check. But we haven't had a consistent, the website is really challenging to update, which is why we're getting a fresh one. It was created by an educator years ago, and it seems like only certain people have access to change certain pages, and it's not as flexible as we want. So that's why we haven't had a protocol, but it's definitely, thank you, Jody, it's definitely something that we need to be prioritizing to make sure that those videos are available.
So we have hired a consultant to develop an RFP for us. We're hoping to go out to bid shortly and find a professional to redo our Windham Southeast School District Supervisory Union website. So certainly boards would be able to give feedback on the board pages and how those are oriented and designed. So hopefully, I don't know what the time frame is, maybe this early summer.
So when should the board look to be providing that feedback? And to whom should we provide it?
Whenever we decide on a consultant, and then that would trigger a series of meetings where this consultant would meet with administration,
generally.
teachers,
Okay.
parents, board members.
So we should wait until that.
And then it'd be a collective design of a new website.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other public comment? Anyone else on Zoom? Mindy, you are next.
Hi, I just wanted to ask if anybody's going to clarify whether Mr. Perrin's leave of absence is for personal reasons or whether it's related to the two reports made related to the investigation.
Well, I can tell you that it was not something that the board was involved with, and whether it was something related to that or whether it was a personal decision, a medical decision, whatever it was, I certainly couldn't comment on it. That would be something that the board took. It was not a board action, so I cannot comment on that.
Can Mr. Spino comment on whether it's for personal or professional reasons?
No, we won't comment on personnel.
Did you have any other questions, Mindy?
I do, but I will send them to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other public comments? Okay, I guess we are done with public comments. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to the unfinished business, the sexual abuse investigation. Let's see. Okay, so we are, the last information that I have is that the investigator is continuing to work with the consultant on any information that they receive from the public, and we are trying to remain a distance away from the investigator and the consultant to as much as possible, because we're trying to avoid any potential conflicts of interest. So they are continuing to do their work, and I would encourage anyone who may have information to contact Attorney Amy Goddard, who is the investigator, whether it's they themselves or whether it's information they know or heard or whatever. So, okay. Anybody, any comment on?
I'll make a comment just because it's like you just said, like we're not privileged with a lot of information, which is very intentional. So we're really just getting updates on some like raw data and obstacles that they've been having. And when I see outreach and education, it's just been consistent with the theme that we've taken up. That the investigation, as expected, there was people waiting to see how it was developed and how it, how you make a report and whatnot. But I know that they are trying to find ways to make sure that they're doing continued outreach throughout the community and beyond, that this is an ongoing investigation. And I think the education component was largely focused on some feedback that we had heard that of people, not everyone, sort of how do you get out the message of what's worth reporting, what's worth making that phone call, because there's, could be an impression that if somebody they saw something specifically or something happened to them, that would be what would be reported, when in actuality, lots of consistent stories help build a clearer picture. And so just some of the feedback we got is that they wanted to do outreach to help encourage people to know that, maybe no information is too little. Maybe you've had a personal experience or just don't like the way something was handled, and that this is the type of feedback that they're also looking for. So it's not limited to, they'll be the first to tell you whether it's relevant, I think. I'm just gonna go out on a limb there and say that. So I just know that that's something they're working on, and again, per feedback from the community and just what makes sense is we're trying to give them permission to keep working. So we get these kinds of updates, but I know that that's something that they're working on, is determining how to have better outreach throughout our community to get into different facilities, so it's not just a board press release, but then also to be more clear with the community about what's worth making that phone call and just checking in and seeing if maybe you do have information that's worth sharing. So just food for thought, please.
Oh, Mindy?
Hi, thank you, Michelle, for explaining that. I do want to ask now again, months ago, David Scholes, said that Attorney Goddard and Chris Overtree would explain his role in relation to the investigation. And when I spoke with Attorney Goddard after that, she was unable to. She wasn't sure what his role was. But now I hear references to him as a consultant working directly with her. And I'm wondering if the board could please now explain in what capacity Mr. Overtree is working on this investigation and what the role is in relation to Attorney Goddard. And is he now handling all of the information that
No,
Attorney Goddard?
I'm sorry, I may have misspoken, because I don't usually speak on this matter, usually it's David. But he worked for the board, he doesn't work for or with Amy, he works for the board.
But I did notice that he has been included in the executive sessions with Attorney Goddard for the last several meetings. I'm just wondering so it sounds like he is receiving the information in the reports, and I'm wondering what exactly is his role in relation to this investigation? You called him the consultant, but can the board please define Mr. Overtree's role?
I'm not getting any new information.
I can't,
Is that Mr. Overtree in the room? I'm sorry, who responded? I didn't,
it's me, Kelly.
I heard another voice.
That was my voice. Sorry, Mindy.
That's okay. I'm just hoping for some clarity on what exactly his role is in relation to the investigation. Certainly that the public could know that.
I believe he's helping us with outreach, that he's, that is a role that he's working on at the moment. Ways that we can, and that's as much as at the moment that
Isn't it true that he'll do the climate survey at the high school once the investigation is over?
I believe so, yeah.
Right.
But why is he being included in the executive sessions now? I mean, I do have to ask, there's sensitive information being relayed. As you know, many of the reporters have been in touch with me also, and they're very interested to know who is receiving the information that they're reporting. And so I think there would be a lot of reassurance in just knowing exactly what his role is and why he's being included in those executive sessions. If you want people to report freely.
I don't believe that he is receiving the information that Amy is receiving. He's consulting with the board, or we're consulting with him to address outreach issues. And sometimes that's helpful to be having the conversation at the same time in the same executive session. So that's.
Attorney Goddard is not relaying information from the actual reports during those executive sessions?
I'm not going to speak anymore to that. If you have any concerns that you want to put in writing, you can certainly email them to me, and I can see if I can get you a response. Thank you.
Thank you. I would actually just like to comment though and say that we haven't heard a single, any sample report from anyone. Like, that's confidential, and that's for the investigator to have. So again, like, the board has only been presented some very raw data to to be accountable that they're working on things. But we have not, and I have no reason to believe that Dr. Overtree would have any personal information, any account of any story or anything. That is within Attorney Goddard's hands only, and information we're really feeling protective about keeping space from. So no information is being shared with board members or Dr. Overtree, certainly in executive sessions, and that's something we can confidently commit to and share with you guys.
Thank you, Michelle. That's helpful. Thank you.
I think it's important that Dr. Overtree, because he will be working on the climate survey too. I mean, he's in general, I think, been working with us to understand the board's commitments and our goals, because he is sort of representing that on our behalf as far as things like outreach come in, understanding our objective. And I would imagine it'd be helpful for him also in time to be doing that. This will be relevant to the work that he will do doing climate survey, but that's me making assumptions. We have no strategy or plan as of right now.
Okay. Thank you. Any other public comment on this topic before we move on? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go on to the update on BUHS school climate surveys. I think I put this on here, Mark, because we got stuff from BAMS, right? So I was just looking for a time frame. If you had any sort of a time frame on ballpark figure when we might see something.
Probably 20 minutes, maybe. 15,
But
20
how are you ready to present tonight, or? Yep. Oh, okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is this the Panorama Survey results?
Yes.
We just got those results 2 hours before this meeting. So we really haven't had time to read and digest the report. So it's fine that I welcome the presentation you're doing, but I also expect that this issue will be discussed at the next board meeting, after the board has heard your report and been able to actually read and digest the Panorama Survey reports.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So we'll watch your presentation, and then if we have questions, we'll come back next board meeting and.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the framework is, we've been doing climate surveys for close to 15 years. Most recently, we started using the tool Panorama last year as a pilot. We do climate surveys in all of our schools. And initially, we were going to present an overview of the school district, Kelly, climate data, and then we could dive into individual schools. Although I heard an interest in hearing specifically about BUHS. So Paul has put together an overview of some of the fall data that we've collected at BUHS. Chris is going to talk to some action steps and speak to how we've interpreted the data and how it has informed decisions from the fall through to the spring. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll be initiating our spring climate survey. So we'll have fall, action steps, what we've put in place, spring results to measure, what have we made a difference. And we're doing that in all of the schools. But tonight is just a small example of how that looks for BUHS. Okay. Any questions about that process?
So actually, what I'm going to do is give you an overview of the whole of the climate survey for all of the schools, sort of WSESU overview, and then we'll dig a little bit into the specifics. Let me see if I can make this work. There we go. And put that up there. So the PDF of the slideshow is on the website, the WSESU board website, in case folks want to follow along at home. As Mark said, these are results from a fall, around mid-October survey of students in grades 3 through 12. It's the second of the surveys. We did another survey back in January of 21. Actually, let me start to get to the details here. Administered mid-October, first administered in January 21. We're going to be doing one more administration very soon to finish up the year. For this particular survey, about 1,200 students responded, 445 in grades 3 through 5, 748 in grades 6 through 12. That's how Panorama breaks up the surveys, grades 3 to 5, grades 6 to 12. That represents about 2/3 of that grade span, 3 to 12, of the students in the district. So about 2/3 of the district responded. Three broad categories: school climate, sense of belonging, and custom questions. The custom questions are the ones that we added in order to get some continuity with prior year, before we started using Panorama, prior year questions. So to sort of give us a little bit of continuity across the years. In the first two, it's about 15 to 17 questions overall about school climate, 15 I think in the grades 3 to 5, 16 or 17 in grades 9 to 12. The results that you'll see tonight, the way they report the results to us, are percentage favorable response. So of the students that responded to that particular question, how many responded in a favorable fashion? The questions are on a Likert scale, a sort of 1 to 5 kind of scale, and the program, the survey software picks out those, what are considered to be favorable responses, and reports on that. Questions in two of the categories, the Panorama baked-in categories, school climate and sense of belonging, are actually questions that are asked across the country. So there is a pool, a national norm pool, to which we can compare results for this district. And then I'll show you right at the end some ways in which we can be a little bit more refined in that comparison. So, for grades 3 to 5, 445 responses in these three categories, the amalgamated, if you will, there are questions associated with each of those three categories. About 83% of the students in grades 3 through 5 responded favorably to the set of custom questions that we had. sense of belonging 70%, school climate 68%. And then over on the right, you can see compared to overall national norms, what was the percentile of our responses. Responses were, the questions were all of these questions, and you can see the percentage, so you can see there was quite a bit of variability in responses across the set of questions. Questions like, how well do people at your school understand you as a person? How positive or negative is the energy of the school? How much respect do students at school show you? Overall, how much do you feel like you belong to your school? These are all 3 to 5, 3rd through 5th grade questions. Additionally, there is at least one trusted adult in school I can talk to. Kids in my school are kind to each other. I feel safe at school. All of those sort of general questions that are trying to get at how do students have their experience in the school. That's the grades 3 through 5 results. Here are the grades 6 through 12 results. You'll notice the percentages are lower, and you'll see that with respect to national norm data, they are also lower. The fact that those responses are lower is a national phenomenon. As you go up through the grades, and you think about kids in school, as you go up through the grades, there is less of an attachment to school and less satisfaction overall with school. It actually, interestingly, in some cases tips up towards 11th and 12th grade. So it is those students in grades 6, 7, 8, 9 that are probably the struggling with their attachment to school, or school providing the things that those students need. So there's less of a connection there than there is in the earlier grades, or in some cases in the upper grades right at the end of school.
But if I may add,
sure.
Nevertheless, the percentile scores are very alarming.
Good pick. Absolutely alarming. And I'll say a little bit more about that right at the end, but absolutely correct observation there. Those are alarming percentile scores.
Paul, can I ask a question for you?
Sure.
So they are alarming, and I'm wondering, is this, I mean, we've been going through a challenging sort of time period. Is this reflective of that, or is it just, I mean,
I'm
are there...
so glad you said that. Sorry for interrupting.
No,
excellent point.
please.
This survey was given in mid-October. That was at a time where we all know, I mean, in some cases, this is not surprising. Things were in pretty rough shape in October as students were getting more, and we'll sort of talk a little bit about some of the results. Students coming back into school after an extended period of not being around other students created some friction. We know that that happened, and that's also showing up here, particularly at the high school.
I have a question too
Sure.
online. So I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding the graph that you have up there correctly.
Sure.
So let's just take school climate because it's up there, 54%. When it says 20 to 39th percentile, that means that's because you had said on average, generally high schoolers are less happy, let's just say.
Yep.
But still, we're in the 20 to 39th percentile.
Right.
So we're more unhappy than most.
Tim's point, yes.
And maybe
I can-
everybody, the nationally normed, what you were suggesting though is maybe everybody in the fall, if you looked, or it's not comparing everybody in the fall, it's comparing it to last year's data or how many years ago data.
That red orange dot is to multiple years of national norm pool data. And, Emily, you will appreciate this, it also is putting all students in that pool.
Oh.
Right? And I'll show you how that, there's a little refinement that comes in right at the end that we can see, sort of get a little, maybe a better view of specifically that high school question. Okay?
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so I want to make space for the talking about what we're doing about it. Here are the questions from the 6 through 12 survey. Again, sort of how connected do you feel? How pleasant or unpleasant is the space? How much respect do students in your school show you? How much do you matter to others at school? How fair are the rules? Those kinds of questions. Other questions. The same question, kids in my school are kind to each other. At your school, how much does the behavior of other students hurt or help you learning? That was the lowest for the high school. So are we getting sort of the picture there? And then here's what I wanted to show you. This is that sense of belonging category for the 6 to 12 survey, showing you the norm curve for the norm pool, the national pool, and where the school falls. In this case, it says it falls in the 20th percentile. But we have all schools checked, not urban or non-urban, all school levels checked, elementary, middle, and high, and all free and reduced lunch count included. That is, students from very high poverty situations, students from very low poverty situations. If we change the settings slightly to non-urban, I think we would agree that Brattleboro, as much as we think we are cosmopolitan, but I think we can agree that Brattleboro is non-urban. I'm going to choose the high school setting. I recognize 6 to 12 is not just high school, but if we choose the high school setting, and a medium poverty level, 30 to 70%, which generally captures where we are, we see that we actually move up to the 40th percentile. So it's not great. No question, it's not great. It's not quite as bad as that first slide showed. Okay? So, just trying to do this quick a little bit so you get a sense of what's there. Overall, we did see a decline in scores from the January to the October, January 21 to October 21. And again, I would say, recall that was more unsettled at a period of time. We are very much looking forward to what the climate survey results will show now. General trend toward less favorable responses at grade levels, as grade levels increase, that mirrors national trends. The 3 to 5 survey scores generally higher than national average for similar profile schools. Grade 6 to 12 scores generally lower than national average for similar profile schools. And then two really interesting pieces. As I look at the data, it seems to me, looking at the percentages, student kindness and impact of other students' behavior seem to be the lowest scores at the elementary level. Students, and conversely, trusted adults, teacher and principal caring, and safety were the highest scoring components. So a picture of, at the elementary level, this is, and again, given in October, the behavior and the interaction of other students became most problematic at that point in time. At grade 6 to 12, student kindness was low, connection and impact of other students' behavior were lowest scores, trusted adults, teacher caring, and safety were still scored highest. So there's this added element of connection to others, and particularly connection to adults, that comes in at the 6 to 12 level. But in general, it's really interesting to me how similar that set of results is over the set of the whole grades 3 to 12. Okay? So that's the picture. Any other questions? Because I'm going to turn it over. Yes?
I just have a quick question. Is the high school...
Can you say your name and what town you're from?
Kyle Colby, Brattleboro. And do you want me to say it?
Sure.
I just have a quick question. In the high school, was this given during like a set time, like in class or advisory, or was it sent out through like an email that like then was like asked students to respond?
Let me think. I know that we provided a link. We did not provide student emails, right? So we did provide a link to to the teachers. Nancy Johnston, I think, was organizing that.
That's right, yeah, and we did a pretty good job. We did it during advisory time, and we did ask students to participate with their advisors there, so.
Yeah.
You don't remember it?
No, not really.
That's
And also, I know a good portion of the students don't usually go to advisory, and a good portion just don't feel the need to go, or just from like what I've seen, being in advisory, seeing people in the hallway.
We have decent results, right? It was
748
yeah.
in grade 6, again, grade 6 through 12. So, you know, where does that fall? Could we do better in terms of getting responses? Absolutely, no question about it.
So 748 in grades 6 through 12. How many are in grades 6 through
I didn't do that
12?
calculation. I think it's about 1,800 in grades 3 through 12. So I sort of basically did some rough math. 1,200 out of 1,800, that's about 2/3, right? I could be weighted more towards third through fifth. I can do the calculation once I sit down and We'll
Well,
let somebody else talk.
792 in the high school, and how many advanced?
It's less than that, it's about 740 actually in the high school, yeah.
Was any other demographic
Thanks,
information taken with this?
It was?
Okay, so you can sort of point to satisfaction among different,
Yes,
you know.
yes, I
groups.
can.
I'd be
And
curious to see that.
yeah, I'm happy to go into that. The places where I've looked at it, I wasn't seeing large differences between subcategories, and we had a large subcategory of X, which means didn't respond, didn't have information on that category. I didn't want to get into that so much. Happy to answer more questions about that. So, if these are the results, what has been, and we got those in October, well, not quite in October, the end of October, into November. And it wasn't, given the circumstances, it wasn't a huge leap to think, yeah, there's some stuff that we need to do. And so I'm going to turn it over to Chris to talk about that.
Sure, thanks, Paul. That was great. Yes, absolutely. We did receive these results in around November, and we did take them seriously. It's not okay. They're not great numbers, as Paul said. Alarming in some ways, as Tim says. So we took action steps since November. Well, first let me back up and say that September and October, it was a rough go at the high school. No doubt about it. It totally acknowledged. I think if we did the survey today, we would have better results. I would guarantee that. A few things, bigger picture things that we've done. We've had advisories and student groups propose and implement improvement to BUHS, including some of the ideas was to do more outreach to 8th grade and see what their interests are, and to connect and integrate the 8th graders with their advisories that they're coming into, so they feel more welcome and more at home at the high school. There was a lot of student requests for more supervision of the bathrooms. We talked about bathrooms, so we did up the supervision of the bathrooms. This year we've really gone full steam ahead with the Healthy Relationships Committee. We rolled out a monthly themed relationships instruction. Like one of the months was teaching students about what consent is and how to define that. We also, in April, for Sexual Awareness Prevention Month, we had a few events, and one of them was a panel discussion with the Brattleboro PD, the Safe Place, Women's Freedom Center, and BUHS Counseling and Admin about what is the process if there is a sexual assault, or what are the ways that you can receive help as well. So we did do some staff analysis of this data back in December and came up with some action steps there, such as more supervision of the hallways, and for teachers, not letting more than one kid out of your class at a time, using the passes. If there is a student out for quite a while, then calling somebody to have them found. So, those are the kind of things that we've implemented. Bigger picture, facilities, we're going to take out the wall lockers. There was a lot of feedback from students around crowded hallways, bumping into each other at the turns, and we have wall lockers that are barely used. High school students don't use wall lockers, they carry things in their backpacks. So we're going to take some of those out to widen the hallways, make more space for the kids. Occupancy indicators in the single-use bathroom doors. So that way if you're using the bathroom, no one's disturbing you, because they know that it's occupied. It's a little thing, but kind of fits into the big picture here. We've reinstituted tampons in every girl's bathroom. We had them in the single use, but we put them in the larger girls' bathrooms. We're working on the green spaces at the school to develop them, make the physical space more welcoming. BUHS locker rooms update this summer. We have a contract out to more private changing and shower spaces. Personnel, we hired a dean of students. She's been fantastic. She's really good at connecting with students. All the social worker engagement coordinator and flexible pathway coordinators, they're all new positions. They're up and running this year. They all have caseloads. They're all connecting with students, and they're all doing the thing to try to make the school a more welcoming place. Counselors, SAP, Ricky, talked about him, nurses, all the teachers are working hard to intentionally make for example, the teachers talk about what they do at the beginning of class. Some teachers do some mindfulness exercises. They deliberately give a break, rock, paper, scissors. So there's a lot of little tips that we share amongst ourselves to help make the day go better and build the community within the classroom. Next year, we have an expanded academic support staff. We've got 4, 1 for each core area, so they will help struggling students with math, social studies, English, and science skills. So, and that's going to be more of a push-in. They're going to be in the classroom to give that instruction on time versus a pull-out later in the day. We're also very deliberate this year in including students in hiring committees, which actually love hearing students' opinions and voice about possible candidates for teaching positions. And we do small things. Once a week, Ms. Robinson, our health teacher, started an advisory trivia question thing, and so all the advisories online can have a friendly competition against each other. And then we kind of, in the hallways, you could talk about the particular question or whatever with each other. Before February break, a social studies teacher put together just a 2-hour, I forgot what she called it, Friday chill day or something, where the teachers, like two teachers were knitters, so they had it knitting in their class, chess, dodgeball, one teacher did birdhouse building, so just stepping back from the academics now and again and letting everybody do something a little different. And Spirit Week, Student Spirit Week, this was this spring. One of the days was wear neon, so some construction workers out there, so that was fun. So we're doing a lot of things, and this is a list I put together an hour. I could go on and on. I mean, I'm proud of what we do at BUHS, even though the numbers don't quite bear it right now. We are recently, we've started sending out more communications to parents and staff about these things that we do, because I do think we have also a marketing issue that's going on as well. So that's happening intentionally. The other thing that I don't want to do is have this be the driver necessarily. I think it's okay. I think it's a great snapshot, but I don't want to use that data and come up underneath it and answer and respond and react. I kind of want to get ahead of it a little bit with, I'm starting to take more of a strategic approach to how we do this. So I'm wanting to rebuild our vision at BUHS and include stakeholders and then look at what are the obstacles to achieving that vision and then coming up with action steps to get to the vision, and then using other data points as measures or benchmarks along the way to get to that point. So I wouldn't, this is great, and then we can kind of compare it to this year to next year and all that, but I also, there's other data points that I really want to spend more time and look at closer and ongoing. And I haven't quite nailed that down yet. I'll share some of the data points I'm thinking about. One is teacher turnover rate. We've done a lot of hiring this year. I mean, that's an indicator in my mind. Teacher absenteeism, suspension rates, class cuts, dropout rate. Dropout rate is probably my primary consideration. Honor roll, dual enrollment, AP, after high school plans, number of restorative justices that we conduct. So those are the kind of data points I'm kind of wanting to think looking at on a regular basis, and seeing if that helps drive some of this climate survey data up. I would, as we start to kind of do this, I would ask for some board participation and maybe some of the, as we start creating a vision statement. I think that'd be great, just to include stakeholders going forward. I would also, I guess, well, I don't want to go on too long, but I got some big ideas, and I guess the point is I don't want to just react to data. I also want to get ahead of it somehow. So that's my plan going forward.
Deborah Stanford, just a point of identification. So what is the dropout rate at this point, since you raised that issue?
Oh.
Sorry.
Let me get back to you on that. It's not good this year,
Okay,
absolutely not.
all right.
But I don't have a specific number, and it's a moving target. But let me get back to you on that.
Do you know what it was in a, like, a pre-COVID, okay, I won't press you.
Paul, do you,
I get 2 seconds.
I just want to be accurate.
No, yeah. And while Paul is looking for that, I do have another question. And that is, as I consider the recent SRO task force and some of the data from that, or data, anecdotal information, when you say that you're including students in the hiring decisions for students to be an active voice, how are those students selected? What's that process like?
There's no specific process. For example, we're hiring a CBL, community-based learning. She brings students out to the community and at job sites, and they also do resume work and other English type work here, and they get some English credit for that. And so in that committee, I'm actually having a prior CBL student who was a shining student and knows the CBL program from that perspective. So that's one take. There's no specific, usually looking for somebody that's can voice an opinion, because I do want to hear what they have to say about that particular candidate. And also kind of reach to varied groups in the school. So, does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
I probably have a follow-up, but I'll leave it alone for the moment. Yes.
Can I briefly say something, although I don't know how to do my hand thing? I'm too old to do that.
Hold on, we're gonna, there are
I
two
want
other
to say
board,
something about what Mr. Days just said.
very briefly, and then we're gonna go to.
Okay, I'll be very brief. As a retired middle
Can
school.
can you identify yourself first?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm Lyndall Bowl from Brookline. I'm part of the other school district, but I'm representing the advisory council here on NAACP. Now I'll get to what I wanted to say. As a retired middle school social worker of 38 years, I really want to applaud what Mr. Day is doing and the insights he has into what the kids need and how the teachers are being involved in that. I really applaud that. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, while we're waiting for Paul to, do you have the information? Okay, great. Okay.
I will say that where I went was the Vermont Annual Snapshot. If you Google that, that's a website that the state provides information on all schools in the state. This sort of information, it's part of the ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act that replaced No Child Left Behind. The 4-year, this is 2021 data, the 4-year graduation rate for BUHS 76.8%, state graduation rate 83.1%. The state rates that as approaching the standard. 6-year graduation rate 83.5%, state 87%, the state rates that as meeting the standard. And that part of the issue is how do you choose to measure graduation rate? Because of the flexibility of things these days, a kid starting, as a sophomore doesn't necessarily march through in order 4 years and get done. So perhaps the 6-year graduation rate is a better measure. Stuff's all over the place. It's just they give you two.
But it's about 20% that are not graduating.
15 to 20%.
Yeah. Okay.
Emily, did you have a comment, question?
Yeah, so Paul, I really appreciate your presentation, and I really liked your pulling out of the trend data from all the way from elementary to high school. Really, I wrote it down, kindness in the behavior of students affecting other people's learnings. I guess if I was to, since my background is in research, maybe and I don't want to oversimplify, but what I see is maybe one process could be, and maybe you're already doing this, is like disaggregating by school, seeing what schools that are lower on the trend, which isn't uncommon for a lot of different measures. I mean, every school is going to be low on something, but seeing where these trends start and then targeting some supports and approaches towards them, right, from all the way from elementary to high school. And I guess the one thing that I think is really hard, because some of these things are really broad measures, like kindness. I mean, that's hard, but I guess when you target those supports and approaches, how are we going to track it so that we make sure that the trend goes up? Because I think if we start with the high school, where it seems like, oh my God, like reaction wise, that's the biggest. But if the trend was low in elementary and high schoolers automatically don't like their schools as much just because they're angsty or whatever, it's always going to be lower, because it's kind of like it's been set in place earlier on. And I think we just heard from Mr. Day, tons of amazing work. Who knows why the trends are lower, but it's like, using that as a starting point. And I think most schools, they have so much going on already that's great. So adding in a few other things and then tracking it, hopefully not overwhelmingly, it seems like an obvious starting point. Maybe that's what you're already doing, though. I didn't really hear a follow-up, because with Mr. Day's presentation, it didn't really, the supports didn't sound extremely targeted. So maybe, Paul, you had somewhere else you were going with that.
So a couple of things, Emily. This data reflects a moment in time. So in October, when the students took the survey, we will take it again in a couple of weeks in May. All of our schools will do that. We use the general feedback from the school district data to help develop our recovery plan. And inside of our recovery plan, each individual school in our school district has their own school improvement plan. So their school-specific data, academic, social, emotional, and behavioral data is targeted to guide each of our individual schools. So we have a broad recovery plan, and then individual schools with improvement plans that are related to the recovery plan. So schools do get to targeted goals using school-specific data, both climate and academic proficiency data, and behavior data.
Would it be accurate, Mark? Thank you for that. I remember going to visit you at Green Street back in the day when you were principal there, and you had amazing data, I think with Bryn Tucker, maybe, I think I remember him was.
Yes.
And you were tracking all kinds of stuff. So is it accurate to say that the school climate data, some of these lower measures taken in the fall, taken in the spring, we would see some goals what you're saying is we would see some goals that would be focused on them for each school, maybe at the beginning of next school year, and then we'd hear about them at the end of the year. Is that the case?
Yep, absolutely.
Wonderful.
And I think Emily, using the leadership councils is probably the most efficient way to do those school-specific reports, just because the nature of our meetings and would be difficult, for example, to have 10 schools report out on school climate tonight.
I'll just add briefly as well. Used to be called Brattleboro Area Prevention Coalition. It's now Building a Positive Community. BAPC has worked with the school district for many years to use those climate data pre-Panorama and now with Panorama to work with the middle school leadership teams and the leadership councils. That's been really positive work, putting the data in front of students and saying, what are the pieces that we need to work on in this school? There's going to be a middle school leadership convention again this summer, seminar up at Landmark College. That's ongoing work, and to me, in a lot of ways, that's really one of the best endpoints for these sort of survey data, is working with students to think about what needs to be improved in schools.
Yeah.
First, Chris,
Yes.
You nailed it when you said that the board members are also stakeholders in this. We are in this together. Your goals are our goals. And that's why I'm surprised that it took so long to get this data, frankly. We requested this months ago, And this could have been one factor in resource allocation, for example. We could have been partners with you a long time ago, but that's water under the bridge. But in the spring, I hope that the board can receive the data as soon as you get it, so we can all work on this together. Secondly, the last meeting that we had data from 220 participants from the student survey, and I would think that that would be very useful data to see how their findings correlate with the Panorama Survey. One thing in particular is suspensions. Again, this is something that the board asked for long ago, suspension data. How many students are being suspended more than half a day, more than 1 day? It's data that we continually request, but we haven't got it. And I think that that would be useful in assessing the climate too. So again, I request, I would hope that by the next board meeting we have suspension data. But again, I applaud the direction that you're going, the strategic approach, really innovative ideas, and good for you, and good for us.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I can get that suspension data.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I have a question. So this Panorama is a pilot program, and I know that the high school did climate survey, has been doing climate surveys, has the elementary schools have been, or the grade schools have as well. So does anyone have like a knee-jerk reaction to how this program compares to the information you've had in the past? I know you're not prepared to speak to that, like to do like a real comparison, but just do you guys like this program? Do you like the way it's designed and collects information?
I think it's hard for us to answer that. Greg Stoller and Paul have really led the way in kind of working through the mechanics of the program. Do you want to speak a little bit to that, Paul?
From a data geek perspective, it's vastly better because it allows me to slice and dice, disaggregate some of the stuff that Lana was talking about in a way that movable, and it is literally a movable norm curve, is really helpful. Just being able to compare ourselves to national norm levels is hugely helpful. That other climate survey was great because we had it for multiple years, pretty much the same questions. The BAPC middle school leadership team did great stuff with it. We were able to use it in our improvement plans, but it was a static, sort of send it out as a Google Doc or send it out as a paper form and then tabulate it in. This has some bells and whistles that are really nice. So but wait, there's more. There's also, as part of this package, a whole lot of information about specific interventions that teachers can do to respond to their data. So it's the whole other side of it is tied into, it's built on the Castle framework, tied into pulling information from a number of the different developmental designs, responsive classroom, those sorts of activities that are part of a package inside of Panorama. We haven't even delved into it.
And can the section that's custom questions that were developed, I'm guessing, by our leadership, can you guys talk a little bit about that, about what that looked like or where you got those questions or what it represented?
That was a way to honor the questions that we had been asking in the previous 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So to continue that trend to track.
Just to do a little bit of equating,
I
look at those trends over time.
John wanted to add to that answer.
Yeah, all I wanted to add, Michelle, was that the questions, essentially, they're the same. They're very similar, getting to the same issues around sense of belonging, sense of safety, sense of identity with a school, and how people treat each other, feeling that they're trusted adults within the school, or there's a high level or not among students themselves. So the items themselves are very similar, plus with the custom questions, we can put in some of the questions that we've had for many years. In my mind, what's most exciting about this regime to our past regime is that we're doing it twice a year. We're doing it in the fall and then we're doing it in the spring. And that goes to what Emily was speaking about. It's gather data. look at the data, what is it telling us? Then developing action steps and targeted interventions, implementing those, like Chris was speaking about with the high school, and then gathering data again later in the year to say, hey, are we making progress? That to me is the exciting piece about this regime. And that's the most important thing. It's, we can gather all the data we want, but are we doing anything with it?
Yeah, and I don't think we look at the data as like a final exam either. So like when we get our data in the spring, okay, that shows us some progress we made. We're not going to be happy with it overall, but it'll help us set goals to start the next school year. So it's very much, I see it as cyclical. How do we respond to information we receive so that we're constantly, hopefully, improving our school communities?
So to that end, what has happened thus far with the data that the SRO task force compiled, and how are you utilizing that data with this that you guys have collected? And then what are your plans to work with them on implementation and, you know, the places where you meet? Because I'm seeing some places where the things that you've done and as a response to the data that you've collected go against the recommendations of the task force. And so I'm curious to see how, so for instance, more monitoring in the bathrooms or more supervision in the hallways. So those are some places where the data sort of disagrees, or at least the solution disagrees. Yeah.
I think, frankly, I think we need more time to put the two together and to develop those action steps. We received that report right before spring break. It's been a busy return from spring break, but I think we're absolutely dedicated to molding the two. I mean, you collect data, you have to use it.
Yeah.
Right, so.
So you guys are planning to reach out to the SRO task force and have some kind of meeting or some sort of, I would love to see the results of that work. That's fantastic. Thank you.
And again, that'll be ongoing. It's not a one and done, but it's something that needs to be developed over time and a continuation.
I'd really like to just acknowledge, because I don't know if probably a lot of you know, but today's Teacher Appreciation Day. And I'm just looking at, I just want to, I know, I would have, like, I will formally just right now, just, I want to commend and thank all of our, any teacher that's hearing this, and to know how very appreciated you are and that we understand what a team effort it is, and it's, Appreciation Day is like, it seems like you need a whole lot more than Appreciation Day. So I'm sorry that this is what we're offering you as our humble gratitude, but I have to acknowledge the highest number. If you walked into a class of set, how concerned would your teacher be? 96%. This is not to dismiss that my principal cares about me, and everyone in our school is at 93% in our grade schools. But even to go to the high school, which, you know, we're all acknowledging feels more concerning, and I do think in general it's developmentally there's that sense of belonging is more of a challenge anyway. And still it is the highest number score that I'm seeing, 87%, about walking into a class and knowing that somebody cares. And I look forward to seeing how we can continue to develop this. I think, you know, you were talking about the work you guys did with the Sexual Prevention Month and some of those, and I think that's great. I've heard firsthand from students, though, have at the same time said, but we don't have any females to turn to, and I've gotten messages, and those are the types of things where it's like, so students know there's someone in the school they can connect with, they just don't necessarily know how to reach them or when to go to them, and so those are the big picture goals, right, is to make sure all of our kids are feeling safe. But I think it starts with trusted adults, and I think that those numbers really say a lot about the heart that's in the schools. So regardless of our problems that are ever trying and forever, this is commendable, and I'm just in that one piece there, seeing those big numbers on my principal cares about me and my teachers care about me is very meaningful to me as a mom with kids in the district.
Thank you.
Just one more comment?
Sure.
Quick. In addition to what you're doing, I'm sure that you're thinking about how you're doing it at the high school and moving away from, we know from national data that punitive actions are less effective than other actions like restorative justice. So I would hope that the ethos of the high school would evolve from being less punitive to more of a restorative justice model.
Absolutely. That's really one of our philosophies, to avoid exclusionary practices. Yes, agreed. And you said you wanted suspension data, so I can show you that, and I think that will help.
And
Make
restorative
that-
justice.
And restorative justice data, I can get that as well.
Restorative justice is becoming better and better,
Mhm.
more and more used.
Okay, anyone else on the board? Okay, then we will go to Bethany Rehnquist. You have your hand up.
I do. Hi, Bethany Rehnquist, Brattleboro. I actually had my hand up a while ago when Mr. J was talking about some of the implementation of stuff. And so I have a couple of comments on that. My other thing that I wanted to just very briefly say is that I have a few things I'm going to email the board about. My concern with that is that typically when I email the board, I've gotten one, possibly two people that have written back to me. And I also feel like there's not any resolution to many of the things that people do email the board about. So I just want to throw out there that perhaps emails to the board are, I don't know if there's a way that we can make that more efficient or somehow make it such that there's a different way for people to communicate and have conversation with the board, because these meetings are so full. So that's that. I'll jump into my stuff based on the information. Thank you for presenting all this data. It's really interesting. I'm wondering if it's, I think it was said that it's available on the website, but I'm wondering if we could find out more about where on the website it's available so that we can look at it. That's number one. I'll go through them really quickly before you all respond, because that way I won't waste any more of the time. I know we're limited. I also wanted to just say that on the idea of having menstrual supplies in the bathrooms, I want to make sure that that includes both pads and tampons, and also perhaps change the language to people who menstruate instead of just females or girls. I feel like that's a little more inclusive. My understanding was that there was some resistance to instituting either this practice or the drive that some students had towards collecting supplies. So I'm happy to hear that that potentially is getting dealt with. And I'm also curious if they will be in all bathrooms, specifically because not all people who menstruate identify as female, including the single stalls. Then my next thing is I'm wondering what is happening as far as parent surveys go, because I would be curious to see how parent climate surveys might change over the course of the school years. I have two more things and then I promise I'll stop. One of the things that has been talked about a lot is having an adult in the school that students can connect to, or having principals that they feel connected to. I'm not going to push on the idea that nobody knows the reason for the recent leave of absence on the part of the principal at the high school, but I will say that I'm sure that there are students who did feel connected to that person and also are probably feeling either uncertain or concern about that person being gone. So I'm wondering what's happening to support students through that and to reassure them. And then the other question I had as far as kids in school and behaviors causing students to feel either unsafe or not interrupting their learning is I also am aware that there's a potential that the STEP program is going to be phased out, and I'm curious what impact that might have or what might be replacing it, as well as the pretty massive lack of special educator administration that will be coming up once several of the supervisory union positions vacate at the end of the school year. I know that was a big list. Not all of it has to get answered at the same time or this evening, but I just want to put those thoughts out there for stewing purposes going forward. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Bethany. I will say, I'll take the easy one, and I will say that the Panorama Survey results are under the agenda for this evening's meeting on the SD website. And Mark or anyone else in the administration want to field any of the questions that or comments?
Parent survey?
Parent survey we did mid-year. We don't have plans to do, the notion was to do that once a year, as we've done in the past.
But we can certainly share those results and have those posted on the website. Chris, did you catch any of the others?
Yeah, yes to pads and tampons, at least in the single stall bathroom I use. Yes there are pads and tampons in the single stall bathrooms. Thank you for the feedback on people who menstruate, got it. And we'll investigate putting these in all the bathrooms.
And in terms of special ed, we'll be hiring. We'll be starting those processes up as soon as possible.
Okay. I wanted to say that in terms of responding to public like emails and things, I know we all try really hard, and hopefully if you have a clear ask in the email, something that can be responded to. Sometimes if it's just general, then we're able to either put it on an agenda or talk about it, but there might be a better way to have like a direct ask if you didn't already, or to send another follow-up email if you haven't gotten a response.
And I'm going to try to, when I read emails, I'm going to try to go back to my list of how to, where to find out what I think is appropriate. Maybe it's something that wouldn't necessarily be a full response to the person, but it might end up on an agenda or that sort of thing. So I'm going to try to go back to my list when I read emails in the future. So thank you, Bethany. So now we will move on to the SRO, School Resource Officer and Task Force proposal. Tim, did you?
Yeah, let me just get right to it. The task force met for 8 months. We heard their report last meeting. So with that in mind, I move that the superintendent's office, in collaboration with the BUHS administration, create a plan to implement the recommendations based on the SRO task force. In addition, I move that the superintendent report back on the status of this plan at the next board meeting.
So moved.
Okay, I think Tim moved, so you're seconding?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Can we have discussion first?
Yeah.
Sure.
I just would like to hear from administrators. I guess I need to hear from you guys on, you've had more time. I know that report came in right before and it gave incredibly valuable information. So can you share a little bit about how you're processing that information and your thoughts on I guess we're kind of the direction that Tim's suggesting.
I think it is a process and it takes time. I can report out at our next meeting. I'm not going to have like a final report, but how we initiate and get started. And I think a combination of the data we heard tonight and will receive in 3 to 4 weeks with our spring climate survey data, I think we need to put it all together and develop a unified plan for how we're supporting all of our students. So we can report out on some action steps that we've taken, who we're talking to, who we're consulting with. And I think that's about what we could be prepared for our next meeting.
If I can clarify, yeah, we're talking about the student climate survey, but I was speaking specifically to the SRO position.
Yep. I'd like to speak to that since I was the one that reacted the last time. And I will say that, well, I think the information that was gathered was extremely valuable. I think there are missing pieces in that work. And I think we need to complete the picture before we make a decision. And I will say that based on the amount of physical damage that was done to our buildings in September and October. I say that based on the number of, and while it's a small number, it's a vocal number of students that are not responding to intervention at this point in time and attending classes. One of the students on the task force stated that many students do not go to advisory, and yet that's where a great deal of the data came from. I think we need to look at numerous data sources. I think we need to look at varying stakeholder groups. And I think to make a decision based on one group's gathering of data without that being a fully realized collection of data is inappropriate and unprofessional. And that is not to devalue the work that they did or the opinions that they found. I think it entails more discussion. If as a community leader or a business leader, you are going to make decisions based on the input of a quarter of the students on campus, and no other stakeholders, then you are potentially making a decision based on a false premise. And so it would be the same as only a quarter of your population voting and assuming that that is the input of the whole.
So I think the framework is how are we supporting all of our students? And we receive information from students. We have a responsibility to respond and to work with them to improve the community. And we'll use the SRO report as a framework. We'll use the climate survey as a framework. We'll use some of the data points Chris spoke about tonight as a source of information as well. But we want to respond to students. We want to support all of our students, and we will absolutely take steps to doing that. But it's a process. I guarantee you I won't have like a game plan at our next board meeting, a holistic game plan. But I can provide, steps we've taken to start moving the needle, which we've already had taken, but how we will continue to do that.
Your motion asked for a report, right? I mean, that was, can you read which motion was given?
Yeah, I move that the superintendent's office, in collaboration with the BUHS administration, create a plan to implement recommendations based on the SRO task force report.
I guess I can say we'd be prepared to provide an update of action steps that we've taken and what we're working towards.
And I think, and you can chime in on this if you want, the recommendations were not just from a quarter of the student body, but that task force that met for 8 months was a very diverse group that included teacher, students, members of the public, chief of police, counselor, student counselor. In the beginning, Chris was a member of it too. So it was a very diverse group.
So Tim, I would say it did not include anyone from WRCC, and we are a part of this campus. It may have included students, but it included no staff.
Oh, it included,
No
excuse me,
administrator.
it included a lot of staff. I was a member of the advisory council for the 8.5 months. And
It did not include any WRCC staff.
What is WRCC? As a community member, I'm not familiar with
It's the Windham Regional Career Center.
Oh, yes, it did. It did. The director was part of it. She
No,
participated in
I am the director, and I was not on that task force.
No, you were not on the task force, but we definitely communicated with it, and several of our students played a big role in that career center on purpose. So it was very well represented. I really took a little issue with what you said earlier, because it was a very broad advisory council, and it worked very hard for 8.5 months to include all facets that played any role.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right.
So
if I can comment. Sure. I just, so Tim, I think to hear you read that motion again one more time, I think for me, the only piece that isn't quite resonating with me is that it's specific to only the SRO report, because I would anticipate it being a substantial, maybe one of the most substantial pieces. I mean, this was a dedicated job that was spent, very thorough. It was an excellent report. but I would like to have our administrators have an opportunity to really evaluate that and look at other work, and I would absolutely anticipate any transition. I think that was actually just personal opinion mistake this last year, is that it probably you don't just make one change, you don't just flip the page, right? Like to have held one position and then transitioned a new representation to meet those needs might have looked like, in my mind, is just good practice. And to create transitions and to shift things, it's good for grounding people and continuity. So anyway, I just feel like the motion that you're making is very specific to only using the SR report, where I feel like these climate surveys do matter. And if there's any kind of counter feedback, I think we need an opportunity to hear it, but I would like to have a timeline. I think that would be helpful if we could have maybe a timeline. I know it's the end of the year and I'm sure there's plenty to do, but if we could, just talk about that, something that's realistic to ask. I don't know. I don't mean to put you on the spot like that, Mark, and throw something. I know it could be a big undertaking with a lot going on, but I would like to hear a more comprehensive feedback from you, not just on the spot, having to speak to something that you saw a few weeks ago when there's maybe other pieces to consider.
And can I just ask just a clarifying question? How long has it been, or when was the SRO put on hiatus? What was the start of this school year?
No, actually, it was prior to that. If I could speak, Sean Murphy. Andy, our former superintendent, and Steve Perrin, when the whole SRO issue came up, I can't remember the exact month, but they said what we will do is suspend the SRO in the high school for the ensuing year. So the question I was going to ask, it has budgetary implications. So the budget will be developed in November. I'm not sure whether the budget that is currently passed does have the resources for an SRO in it. We shouldn't have a conversation. We should just, let me speak and then you speak. So I think it's very important to follow the process, which I think Mark referred to. You can't all of a sudden say, yeah, we are going to have an SRO, which sort of leans towards the motion that has been made. So I'm having a conflict as to how I would vote for that motion, because as the administration has brought up very clearly, it's something that is a process that has to be developed. So no, don't interrupt me. Wait until I'm done and then the chair can recognize you. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
So I still need to ask my question because I'm not sure I heard the answer. So, and maybe I did. When was the SRO suspended in the high school? When was that position suspended?
We definitely did not start the school year with an SRO. I don't recall whether we suspended the SRO last spring. No.
I think they finished the year, didn't they? They did. Yeah, sorry.
I feel like they did too.
Yeah. They did. It was about early May.
Year. So it's this particular school year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to speak to Sean's point. He made a good one. Something that we ran into was that last year, late spring, it was, I thought, a responsible decision to pause when you don't know. If you don't know, you might be causing harm, stop, right? Just pause. And I thought that was a really responsible decision that Steve and Andy had come to. But something that wasn't considered that Sean just brought up was the budget. And so we found ourselves last year in a situation where voters had just approved a budget that had a line item for an SRO position. And we do have an obligation to some degree, to be forthright and make sure our voters know what they're voting for and to uphold that budget. And so that is something that is worth, I'm not sure how it's listed in that next year's budget. I actually don't remember, and I probably have paperwork, I could probably dig it out. I'm sure this year, we do shuffle funding around, that does happen, and they've worked hard with ESSER funds to fill in social workers and things like that. But again, that's where we wanna have a big plan and to see it parallel with our budget and make sure it all works, because, right, bureaucracy's not always fast, so. Just gonna look it up.
Kelly, can I just clarify my
Sure.
comments for a minute? And, first of all, I appreciate the person who spoke up on Zoom. I don't know who that was. But I'm the director of the Career Center and I was not on the task force and my teachers weren't on the task force. And so I want to clarify that. The other thing is, I want to say that I think there were students who take Career Center classes that were probably on the task force. But I don't know who was on the task force, other than knowing that my staff was not included in that. I will say that while I believe absolutely everything they said, I think there is more data that should be collected as part of that, and that is what I'm pushing for. And I'm also pushing for not having a knee-jerk reaction. I do know that we as a campus team made the decision to include the SRO in the line item budget, not because we planned to replace the SRO, but because we had been asked to put the position on hold, and we didn't know if we would be asked to return the position to the budget or not. So we have made absolutely no moves to replace the position or to have an SRO. We have been completely waiting for direction on that, and we would not ever hire that position without a decision being made here that that's what we were being asked to do. But we felt like we had to build the budget around that based on the fact that we simply didn't know. And we can't create more money after the budget is passed. We would rather have the budget pass, end up not hiring the position and having a surplus than ending up in a deficit.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with Mark. I would like a little more time to be able to make a more thoughtful response. They put a lot of work into it, and I definitely want to engage in this conversation, but I'd like to talk to Mark, I'd like to talk to the SRO committee, and I'd like some more time, and then report to the board on where we're at and what action steps we could take.
So if you were, if Tim was willing to rescind his motion and the board gave you more time to go through this and come up with something, come up with, whatever response for us to review and see what we thought of it, how much time do you think that would take? Understanding that you have other things on your plate that you're dealing with, I'm sure.
Kelly, I think we could give periodic updates at future meetings, like this is where we are from the last meeting, and vice versa through the end of the school year.
Okay.
I have one more question. There is no SRO at the high school at this time. We have a resource officer who actually, I believe, used to be an SRO years ago. So here we are in the spring. The fall's not that far away. I know the students don't want to hear it expressed that way, but it's true. So we have to do planning on what will happen when we start the spring. The fall. So I'm just wondering about a timeline for a decision-making process. Madam Chair.
Is there any response to that?
Does this feel like
For whether to rehire an SRO or not? Is that
Well,
what
that is sort of what Tim's, that's what I read into Tim's motion, that we should go ahead with the process now to eliminate the SRO.
Okay, I guess I read the
yeah.
proposal as like, how are you responding to that report? How are you engaging with that group? Do you want to clarify, Tim?
My intent was for you to consider the 4 recommendations of the task force to establish a liaison with the police department, for example, to eliminate the position of SRO, to have an armed policeman in the hallways of BUHS. There's a couple of other recommendations to consider those recommendations and come up with a plan for implementation.
Well, I think we can give an update at future meetings on the work that we're doing with our kids to support our kids. I believe that report was presented to the school board, like, if I'm correct, to inform a decision for whether to rehire an SRO position or not. I believe the school board took on that decision-making responsibility last year and implemented this team to provide a report for the board to make a decision.
That sounds right. I mean, I think it's actually in policy. It was originally a decision made by the high school principal and the superintendent, but then for policy, we realized that the board is actually the only governing body to terminate or create a position in the district. And so it ultimately, that could come back to us, which is why I read that also as you were asking for feedback, because I really value the work that was done, but I like to have all the information. So I would really want to hear a final report and recommendation from our administrators based on whatever information they have that they think we need at the table too, so that if this board is taking up that final decision, that we have every piece of information coming from all the different parties involved and can make that decision forward. But also, I think it'd be the board's responsibility if we were making that decision to understand, we don't just cut out a role, but what would a transition look like, what would take its place, et cetera. So that's the thing that that's what I was reading too, Tim, that you were asking for them to start that process of looking into giving us that feedback and having that information for us.
Yeah, but again, I get back to the key words in this motion are
specific
to
for
create a plan to implement the recommendations of the SRO task force.
Because it wasn't just simply to have or not to have an SRO officer. There were other recommendations there, and that I'm curious as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's a process.
As you consider implementing a process, is it possible to consider expanding the position of the restorative justice coordinator? That it perhaps be more than one person in a high school of this size?
I think there are lots of things to consider.
So I would like that to be on the table as a personnel issue.
I think there's folks online that,
yeah.
So Deb Cardane.
Hi, yes, thank you. First of all, I just want to respond to the report with a couple questions and a couple ideas. I want to say to the group that did the work, it's really amazing. And I know we've all been extremely impressed with the quality of that report and what they put together. And I think it's really exciting to have kids participating in research and doing research. It lays groundwork for us to become a community of researchers, right? And a community that uses data. And I think part of that, and something I think is really important to hold in this conversation, is also becoming critical consumers of research. And I just want to bring up a few points with this report that are worthy of holding in this conversation as it moves forward, especially since there are suggestions and recommendations. For instance, there's four categories, right? There's four different sections. And the first section is kind of like this review of all the research that's been done out there. Something I noticed with those reports that are shared in here is they all tend to be on the negative side. And so it raises the question, and this is nothing to downplay any of the work that has been done. Rather, I'm exercising my own criticality of the report that I'm looking at, were there positive research articles out there that would be helpful to know those perspectives? And I'm posing these questions so that as we move forward, we can really feel like this gave us a full picture. So that was a question that came up with that section. There was a section, the next section where those were examples from other schools in the state. And that raised the question for me, the schools in these examples are all schools that either are transitioning to an SRO or have eliminated their SRO. So I wondered, what do the schools look like who kept their SRO? Are they doing well? Are there any positive outcomes there? What does the transition look like of the school that is reported on as having been in that transition? The third section is a survey, and it's a really, I think it's really advanced. They took qualitative information and quantified it, which is really helpful. There were 109 positive results, responses from kids versus 27 cons, pros and cons. So I just think that's worthy of conversation, that 109 kids had positive things to say about an SRO. And then the last thing was examples that, quotes from kids with interview questions. And I just wonder if were there positive comments in that final set, in any of those responses that they got from kids, because what's in the report are mostly negative comments. And I would just like to know if there were any positive ones. So not that we need to answer these questions now, but I think these questions should be taken into account as we use this report to make decisions. Sometimes we jump to solutions too quickly before we really understand the problem. And I think this is a complex question that deserves the time to dig into it in a complex way. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Morgan?
Thanks, Kelly. I wanted to start off by appreciating that this conversation is happening and really appreciating all the work that was done by the task force to look into what is going to actually create a feeling of safety in the school. I think it's pretty evident from the conversation that's going on that some folks in this meeting have really actually read the report and some haven't. And so I would hope that before any further conversation go on, that all administrators, board members, and any other interested parties take it on themselves to read this report. It's fairly brief, and so that you can know what it is that you're agreeing or disagreeing with. The recommendations that everyone is talking about, whether to support or to set aside and look towards other people's perspectives on this, is 4 sentences. So I'm just going to read those so that we all know exactly what it is that we're talking about here. The recommendations are that the schools continue to maintain a student-focused safety staff without the addition of an SRO. So maintaining the status quo that we've had this school year. Explore the option, as some districts who remove the SRO position have, of designating a specific liaison officer with BPD or the Sheriff's Department to be on call in case of emergencies, who would be familiar with the campus and skilled in de-escalation with adolescents. So this recommendation is designed specifically to address the feelings by some people that they would still prefer to have access to a police officer for certain types of situations. Third recommendation is that the school place more emphasis on building an inclusive community school-wide and within classrooms, so all students can have a stronger sense of belonging to a community that cares about their welfare. And the fourth is direct more resources to build system-wide practices around accountability and repair when harm happens in the school community, addressing systemic bias at all levels, and facilitating access to mental health supports for students. So those last 2 recommendations are very in tandem with the kind of questions that I heard administrators talking about with regard to the climate survey. You know, those recommendations are designed to address the same kinds of problems that were being talked about in that conversation. So I don't see these as things that contradict each other, but I also don't see this as something that, well, we can't talk about this without also bringing in that. I mean, we have a lot of things that we're constantly measuring in our schools, and we don't say, well, we can't talk about the climate survey until we talk about the SBAC scores. Can't talk about the parent survey until we talk about the climate survey. So we can talk about each of these things as their own thing, and it doesn't have to be tied up with another piece of the conversation. I also just want to address some of the questions that were brought up by the previous commenter, Deb. I know that as someone who has done a lot of research into this, it is overwhelmingly negative. I have never seen a research study that showed a measurable positive impact of SROs. So I don't think that is really a case of bias on the part of this task force. That is the research that is out there. And when we look at people who are responding negatively and positively to the presence of a police officer in the school, I think that we really need to keep in mind that there are really disparate impacts that the officer is having on different kinds of students. And so when we say that, like, well, hundreds of people said they had a positive interaction, but these 30 people said they had a negative interaction, that's not a coincidence. And it doesn't mean that the 27 or whatever the number was, people's responses are not important. And there's a reason why some people feel more negative about this than others. That doesn't mean that we just need to go by the majority rule here. So I really urge the board to adopt these recommendations. And I really don't, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Shay Witzberger?
Hi all. Shay Witzberger here. I'm a Brattleboro resident and one of the facilitators of the Brattleboro Community Safety Review, as some of y'all may remember. And I want to commend you all for the process thus far of taking a really hard look at something that you know, all kinds of organizations and schools in our country are looking at right now. And I am so grateful for these students and this task force for putting together such great, really comprehensive information. And I do, as I understand it, it really is a board decision to listen to this task force that's been set up through process. And to make the decision about whether or not that's going to be implemented. And I hear, as I've heard in so many other processes about these really difficult topics before, I hear in this meeting some rhetoric that is very understandable and also pretty non-committal. You know, the board is asking potentially to implement these recommendations, and I hear asks for more info that center different kinds of folks. I hear, you know, the level of commitment available is just giving progress reports. And I really understand that it's a transitional process that's going to take time. Nothing happens overnight. Nothing changes immediately. And also, there is a level of commitment available to honor the process that has been decided on and the information that you've been given, and to honor that, as Robin just said, police of all kinds impact different groups of people differently. My professional work now is supporting queer and trans survivors of violence, and I see daily that policing really impacts different kinds of people really differently, and the majority of folks in Vermont are straight, the majority of folks in Vermont are white. And so we really have to take a look at equity when we're honoring this information. So I hope that the board can honor that task force information and the process that you all have agreed to, and take bold but reasonable steps toward transitioning to that more just future that our youth are laying out for us. And I commend all of y'all in that process, and, you know, hope that our community can be a resource to you as you move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mike Sostek?
Yes, thank you. A couple of comments. First of all, I wanted to remind everybody of why we even started all this. And if you think back to when the whole discussion of an SRO came up, it came up because of a group of students or a group of young people, Youth for Change, who are based out of the Root Center in Brattleboro, who raised the issue of an SRO because of equity issues. And that's what really drove the decision to, hey, we're going to take a look at this. Now, that same driver was occurring throughout our nation, so it's not just here in Brattleboro. So I think it's really important to remember that there was hardly any discussion, and we've been talking now for about an hour, I think, hardly any discussion of that were really a driver for this is the impact on historically marginalized people. And it's really important to remember that. I thank Robin Morgan for reading the 4 recommendations. We really carefully constructed our recommendations so that there's nothing here that's controversial. All that Tim is proposing is that we develop an action plan to implement those. Yeah, and we of course would work with everybody involved in it, the administration, students, everybody involved would be a part of constructing those action plans. And I can't understand why a proposal to just construct an action plan is controversial or needs more data. It doesn't make sense to me. And finally, I would just want to comment on Nancy's comments that number one, all of the task force members are listed on the first page of the report. Number two, we talked to, and I was part of that interview, so I was there personally. We interviewed a class in the Career Center, and the teacher was there. The teacher participated very actively in that interview session, and that interview and that teacher's comments were part of the data that we collected. So the Career Center, maybe it wasn't as involved as Nancy would have liked it to be, but we did clearly involve the Career Center, and it was part of our objective to do so. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And before we go to the one last comment from the public, I'm going to make a motion to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Is there a second?
Second. You get it.
Okay, so Michelle, and all those in favor of extending the meeting by 15 minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So now we're gonna go to the last commenter, Jillian.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jillian Lucero Love. I am actually an adult coordinator of Youth for Change. So I work directly with youth who did first bring this to the community's attention, to the school board's attention. And I have a mix of thoughts right now, so I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to articulate them, but I will try my best. First, I actually do want to thank Michael, Shay, and Robin for their comments and what they brought into this discussion. I know that this conversation may feel new or may be new to some of our school board members or to some of the people present within this community. And this is not a new discussion within our nation at all. And this is not a new issue that you have brought to the attention of members of their community. This is just a time where I think within our community, their voices are being elevated a bit more, which I'm very thankful for that part of this process. From my personal perspective, there have been many steps along the way in which, regardless of how many youth speak up, regardless of what they share about their personal experiences, their testimonies, their fears, their concerns, also their visions for safer communities and what they say they know would provide them more of the support that they truly need. The school board continues to have this response of needing more, of requiring more time or more information, or hearing directly from those who actually do support SROs or have that positive perspective. And I want to say that that's incredibly frustrating and really disheartening. And I experienced that as an adult who works with youth, but I'm also hearing it directly from youth who are a part of this process, who have been tasked with working amongst members of their community to do this research, to bring those findings to you, to come up with these proposals that I agree really aren't anything wildly out there. You know, they're naming concrete solutions to the problems that they're facing. And I think they deserve to be heard, and they deserve to really have the school board say, we trust you and we hear you and we want to take action that supports you. And that's not entirely what I feel like I'm witnessing here. In addition, it is really clear, like throughout our history, police, SROs, extensions of that, because an SRO is an extension of police officers, they are viewed as more positive by the cisgendered white demographic. They have a historical impact of harm against historically marginalized demographics, such as BIPOC, such as queer, such as trans, such as disabled, such as youth. And that absolutely has to be remembered and centered in this entire conversation and this entire process. So as there are members of the school board who are saying we need to hear from more people, we need to focus on the positive before we can make these decisions, that actually goes against equity. It does. And that might be a bit hard for some people to understand. But it really does need to be a part of what you're considering, actually a major part of what you're considering when you're making these decisions. So I don't know that I know I have more on my mind. I'm not sure if I can express it right now. Aside from a major thank you to everyone who was a part of that task force, especially to the youth, and to everyone who's really taking that time to hear what they're saying and value their voices and their input and want to move forward in a way that honors them and their needs. Thank you.
I would like to ask for an opportunity to speak, since some of the comments of the speaker before were addressed directly
Okay,
to me.
I'll give you 2 minutes and
That's
then we're
absolutely
going to address the motion.
So I would like to say that I, as an administrator and as an individual, do not necessarily support having an SRO in our building. But what I do object to is the lack of inclusion and opportunity for people outside of a selected group of people to be a member of the task force from our campus. And that is exclusion, and that is the piece that I am most concerned about. If I had selected a group of people to do this type of research and had not selected members from every group possible, people would object. And that is what I am objecting to, that we have not heard from all the stakeholders. And yes, one classroom of students was interviewed. And the data was collected from one teacher and one classroom out of 11 programs and the rest of my staff and all of my students. And so, well, I will say, I think the research is great, and while I absolutely am not speaking in support of an SRO, I am speaking in favor of inclusion.
Oh, well.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
pardon the interruption. I request that Mr. Maciel get to me in writing the language on the motion. I wasn't able to get it all down.
Sure.
Thank you.
Michaela, do you have a very quick comment?
I do. I just am starting to feel, I really appreciate a lot of the statements that people have made and people really laying out the line what they think. I just, I feel like it's one of those moments when someone says, no offense, but, and you know they're about to offend you. That's kind of how I feel right now. No offense, but I just want to say, in case people don't know, that all the SRO task force meetings were warned, and they were all on the website, and they were not private meetings, and this was not a secret group, and we did not meet under cloak and dagger. We met in the Career Center in the Cusick room, and Steve Perrin asked me why he wasn't invited, and I sent him an email that said, these meetings are all on the BUHS website. They are all warned. And the notes, except for the last one, because we had the report, are all on the website. So this is not a secret society, just so you know. And thank you all for all your comments and for participating.
I think we want to move forward.
Yes.
I mean, I think we want to move forward.
Yeah, so Tim has made the motion and Lana has seconded it. The board,
Can I call for a roll call?
you absolutely can. So I guess we'll vote on the motion and we'll see where we are at that point. And if you have questions, then we can try and clarify going forward and see where we're at.
So can I hear the motion again, please?
I move that the superintendent's office, in collaboration with the BUHS administration, create a plan to implement recommendations based on the SRO task force report. In addition, I move that the superintendent report back on the status of this plan at the next board meeting.
So we have to have two motions, right? I'm pretty sure.
Can I just ask one clarifying question to administration? So next year, as far as I'm aware, what I recall from recovery plans and budget season, our plan right now is to continue doing what we've been doing, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Roll call.
Oh,
Roll call.
and so,
Isn't calling each person
oh,
individually?
I'm sorry, yes. We'll start down, Lana,
Here.
Deborah,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Ann,
Aye.
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
and Liz,
Aye.
Emily.
Aye.
Okay, so the ayes have it. So, do you have a question regarding?
I don't have a question, can I clarify, so at our next board meeting, we'll be presenting progress that we've made
Exactly.
towards, okay. That's a big difference than like a plan in place.
No, I always said the status.
Okay. Okay.
So we are going to quickly move through the rest of the agenda, hopefully. Committee assignments, it's been on the agenda for a few times. I've gotten from a number of people, but not everyone, so I'm gonna send out individual emails. Then we'll move on to the administrative report.
Okay, I'll keep it brief. June 17th, unless we have a crazy weather day, is currently our last student day of the school year, and that will be a half day following past practice. And with that being a half day, typically schools will use the second half of that day for a staff celebration, final staff meeting of the year. That will also be the evening for BUHS graduation. School reports, I did send Kelly an email with the reports from all of our schools. I brought hard copies tonight as well. And we'll provide these at the end of each month moving forward. Resignations and new hires. So we have 4 resignations. Tessa Carpenter, Guilford, .4 art position. Sean Clark, BUHS, math position. Mary Harvey Bandish, Dummerston, part-time instrumental music. Shelley Wilson, special ed director, Windham Southeast Supervisory Union. Those 4 resignations. And then I have 6 hires.
Is Shelley through the SD, or does it need to be done at the SD board officially?
I think we can talk tomorrow night about, if there's time, to talk about next steps in replacing and how we're going to move forward to replace her.
I'm just not sure if the SU board is the board that needs to approve it officially, which is, we could add to the agenda tomorrow.
Sure,
and have just
that's fine.
I'm
Yep.
sorry,
No.
just technicality.
Yep. I just
Am
want
I
to get
right?
it.
Am I wrong? I could be wrong. I think she's an SU employee. I'm not.
She is an SU
as a special
employee.
ed.
You're
right, Michelle. Yeah, okay.
I informed the 3 board chairs via email because I wanted some urgency. I wasn't sure if there'd be time for it tomorrow. We will likely start advertising tomorrow,
Well, makes
but we
sense.
can officially do the business tomorrow. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I move that we accept the other 3 resignations with regret.
Second.
All those in favor of accepting with regret the resignations of Tessa, Sean, and Mary, signify by saying aye.
Madam Chair, pardon the interruption, was that Michelle who seconded?
Yes.
Thank you.
All those in favor? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, new hires. Sean Clark, BUHS Academic Support. Emma Cudney, Green Street, grade 5 teacher. Catherine Hazelton, Green Street, grade 5 teacher. Ashley Lutz, BUHS School Counselor. Erica Valente, Green Street, Physical Education. Hannah Wilson, Guilford Central, grade 5 teacher.
Mark, you mentioned one of those is Green Street. That is not Green Street.
Oh, which one?
The one after Emma.
Catherine Hazelton?
Yeah.
Maybe Catherine Hazelton, grade 5 teacher. We will not attach a school name.
I'll take her. I need her. Does she teach grade 4? I'll take her. I'll take her. Taking her out. She's approved.
And is music not on that list?
Music is no?
Oh, my resignation.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We'll present those next week.
Yep.
Next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so
I move we accept the hiring recommendations made by administration.
is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of accepting the new hires as presented by Mar, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
And then I have an FYI, Kelly. Chris Day, as you had voted on in a previous meeting, had planned to leave in May to move on to the National Guard for the next 2 years. He has gone out of his way to ensure that he can be here on campus through graduation. So he's delayed his leave.
Thank you, Chris, and
Thank
thank you
you.
for your service.
Thank you.
Good.
So Frank is not here to do a fiscal report, but it's on the agenda. Is there anything that you? Oh, I'm sorry, Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, as everybody sees on the agenda, there are A through E. So I would like to address, if I could, under new business, motion B, C, and D. Do you want me to read them?
Please.
Okay. Motion to award the BUHS HVAC mechanical system replacement project bid to BG Mechanical in the amount of $473,860 as authorized by the WSESD Board approved capital plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion as read by Sean, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Sean.
And the next one would be motion to award the BUHS HVAC control system replacement project bid to Control Technology Incorporated in the amount of $603,284 as authorized by the WSESD Board approved capital plan.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Sean.
And the last one is motion to approve implementing upgrades to creating a living schoolyard at the Oak Grove School to facilitate independent exploratory learning. Improvements include building a pathway for accessibility, edible and fragrant vegetation, and organic interactive play spaces. Students will also have the ability to plant and maintain their own plants. $15,000 in ARP ESSER funds are expected to cover the cost.
Comment on that? First, it's remarkable how Oak Grove has taken a slab of concrete and made it into a living, learning schoolyard. If anybody has not seen it yet, it's just a remarkable accomplishment. So I commend Principal Kaufman, and also Tara Davis is a parent who shows what a difference a parent can make. She had the original idea, I believe, years ago, and spent hours and hours of her life pushing this vision forward. So I want to commend Tara Davis.
Would you like to second the motion?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion as read by Sean, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So now I will ask if Deb Gass would like to address the EES Head Start, Early Head Start application for COLA and Quality Improvement Funds.
I would love to address that. Thank you, Kelly. Every year, or typically every year, Head Start, in addition to our funding amounts with some cost of living allowances, and I am happy to report that that is certainly an opportunity that we're facing tonight. In total, for our early education services budget that encompasses Head Start and Early Head Start, we've been given the opportunity to apply for an additional $81,648, which would be effective on July 1st, along with that aligns with the beginning of a new funding cycle. And the guidance for those funds are that we must use the funds to increase our salary scale by at least 2.28%. And that's broken up into two categories. One, the COLA must be applied in that way. And then the other piece of that money is called quality improvement. And there are several categories that we can use quality improvement funds for. The first one is to enhance our salaries. And so the recommendation that was approved by Policy Council last week was that we use all of these funds to give everyone in the program at least a 2.28% cost of living increase. We actually have enough money to be able to increase their hourly rate by an additional $1. And it's coming to you tonight for your approval after having been approved by Policy Council last week. The application is due June 1st. And as I said, the funds would be awarded July 1st.
Does, any discussion? Anyone want to make a motion to approve the EES Head Start or Early Head Start application for COLA and Quality Improvement Funds?
So moved.
Okay, I'm gonna give it to Liz, and it sounds like Sean is second.
Can I just ask one question? So I'm just curious, our Head Start staff then, our preschool staff or is it specific to Head Start, is independent of any of our other contracted employees, correct?
This is specifically the Office of Head Start funds that would go directly to Head Start and early Head Start staff. Now, in early education services, we do have some staff who are not funded through Head Start and early Head Start. They deliver programming through our designated Vermont Parent-Child Center award. And we would match these increases for those employees as well using the state funds.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we are running 1 minute behind, and I'm going to make the motion to authorize the WSESD Personnel Committee to approve hiring recommendations on behalf of the board from this meeting forward through the end of the summer.
Kelly, could I recommend that we table that because I feel like that should be a discussion. Typically, don't we usually?
No, typically we do exactly what Barb asked us to do.
Oh, Barb asked us to do.
Yeah.
It's been in July. It's usually for while we're out of session.
It has, but because there are new hires coming in and so fast, and we want to be very reactive, and sometimes, especially if we're here every other week, etc. It would be more reactive if we had the personnel committee.
Just looking for the reason.
Yeah.
So will there be a report brought back to the board? I mean, typically this is so that we're up to date. Just
Yeah, we can. That will be on the minutes every time we approve somebody. So.
Okay.
And the SU would still have to meet for SU positions.
All those in favor of the
Madam
motion?
Chair,
Yes.
pardon the interruption, who seconded that motion?
I'll second it. I just had a question. Do you know what you do?
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So, looks like we've gotten through the agenda, and we are only 3 minutes late, so I will,
Madam Chair, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
is there? Oh, you want a second?
Second.
Okay, so all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So we are adjourned at 8:18.